welcome to episode number 5, I think it is, of Priest Crafts. My name is Rebecca, and I am a priest who lives in the far north of Canada, in Iqaluit, Nunavut, and I love to make things. Like I said, this is episode 5 of a 6-episode trial run, and it's been a while since my last one. I think the last one I posted was in September, and it's now middle of November. So yeah, missed a bit there. A lot of things have happened in our lives. This fall we've started my older daughter in preschool. There have been a lot of ups and downs and changes at work, and we're pregnant. So yay, more babies. We like babies. So that's been really exciting. But at the same time, I haven't been crafting much at all. I've actually had a very odd pregnancy symptom that I sit down to knit or spin or card or something, and I actually feel sick. I've had a sort of nausea aversion to knitting, and that's been really weird. I knit through my other pregnancies, and it's fine. Anywho, I have not been crafting much, and I did write about that at length on my blog, which I should say is Osborne Fiber Studio, osbornefiber.com, so please go check that out. You'll also find show notes for this episode there. So, and if you want to find me on Instagram or on Ravelry, I'm RebbyJ. So I haven't been crafting. I haven't been spinning. I've spun maybe one thing since Tour de Fleece in July. It's been, I would say, like, oh, it's been so sad, it's so terrible, but it hasn't felt terrible. It's just felt like I needed space. My body needed space. My inner sense of drive needed to relax a little bit. So it hasn't been terrible. Of course, as I've started to re-engage with the crafting world and with that side of myself, it's been like, oh no, it's terrible, but it's really not terrible. You know, this is my hobby. No one's paying me to do this. So, but as I started to re-engage, this great thing happened that Wool & Spinning, Rachel Smith over at Wool & Spinning, you know I'm a big fan. She is starting her new breed and color studies with Katrina of Crafty Jacks doing the dyeing. And Katrina picked one of my pictures to be one of the 3 colorways that she dyed up. I was really excited about this because it was one of the pictures during the fall. I take a lot of really close-up pictures of the Arctic tundra because, you know, from far away it just looks like brown, but when you get close up, the colors are really rich and wonderful and varied. And I wanted to see those colors on wool for so long. So Katrina did a really interesting interpretation of one of my pictures that had crowberries and bearberries and crowberry leaves and bearberry leaves. So it was like red, and very bright red and very lime green and black berries. And she interpreted this in a sort of very deep colorway. I'll put a link to the page with that down below. But heavens to Betsy, I have no excuse to buy fiber right now. I have zero excuse to buy fiber. In fact, I should have brought it up to show you, but I have made a rule for myself that I am not allowed to buy fiber until I have spun at least twice as much as I'm going to buy. Because my stash is so out of hand. It's not large compared to some people's, but it's large considering how little time I have to spin and how old most of my stash is. So I need to do a lot of spinning if I want to buy the color studies. So I'm motivated. I'm really motivated now. What I ended up picking a couple posts ago, way back in August or something, I was trying to decide what I was going to work on next, And for some reason, I decided to pick this huge carding project, this 20-ounce carding project. And I had a great start. I got through like 6 ounces in the first couple of weeks. And then I got sick. It totally burned out. Totally couldn't even touch it. But now I've started to do it a little bit here, an hour here, an hour there. And I'm saying to myself, okay, if I can get through this carding project by December 5th, which is when the coupon code from Well for Pearls expires to get the color study, then if I can finish the carding by then, I can order the fiber, and if I can spin this carding project, then I can spin it. This is my motivation. So I'm doing this video to encourage the fire to be lit under my butt, so I actually do it. So this is I'll tell you a little bit about this carding project, which is, this is a great sample of how old my stash is. So this is some Shetland top from Jamieson and Smith. My husband bought a pound of it for me 8 years ago, I don't know, and maybe 7 years ago I dyed it. It was white, and I dyed it with pokeberries. And you see the color has held pretty well. I dyed it in four chunks, 4-ounce chunks, and braided it up. It's been so long that I've had this that I've actually lost one of the braids in the 5 moves we've had since then. So I actually only have 12 ounces of this now. This braid is a little more pink. The other ones are a little bit darker, a little less. They don't have any pink in it. They have more of the darker red in them. So this one's a little different, but I'm just going to mix them all up anyway. So this is one part of the carding project. I have 12 ounces of this, and I'm blending it together with this. What are you? Get out of there. Scrap of yarn in my fleece. There. With this, which is some black alpaca that my mom gave me, again, like 7 years ago. This is from an alpaca farmer who was local to her. I think she grabbed it at a booth at her local alpaca festival, which is going on right now, actually. So sending good thoughts to my mom, who has a booth there. She's colorstorms.com. She does natural dyeing and does a great job. But anyway, she grabbed this for me ages and ages ago, and it's gorgeous. It's this beautiful black alpaca fleece, and it's in fantastic shape for how long it's sat around. I don't know if alpaca just has more natural resilience than wool or what, but it's not. It's in great shape because it's alpaca. It doesn't have any lanolin in it. It's not greasy, and it didn't have a lot of VM in it. What it did have is that this was clearly someone who just clipped the whole alpaca and threw it in a bag. So the bag that I have had belly hair and second cuts and no like tags or anything, but it had everything in it. So I actually haven't cleaned this at all. All I did was I sorted it, and I saved all of the nice long about 4-inch average staple length alpaca fleece. Some of it even longer. And this is going to be more than enough. And I've got a ton left, but it's not. This is the best. So I'll probably never use the other stuff. I'll give it back to my mom. So I'm blending these together, the black alpaca fleece with the Shetland top. I'm carding them into these little rolags. This is a really pink one. I don't want to show you that one. This is the better one. Yeah, so I'm carding them up into a whole bunch of rolags. I think they're coming up kind of fleshy colored on my screen. Yeah, I apologize. The light is very, very indoor light right now because, as I mentioned, I live in Iqaluit, which is not quite the Arctic Circle, but it's pretty close, and it's it's the middle of November. We're 6 weeks from the solstice. So we get about 6 hours of daylight right now. The sun is up from 7:45 to 2:45 right now. And none of those hours are hours I have to myself to record. So I'm making do with the lighting. So I am sorry if it's very lousy indoor lighting. It's a little bit, I was going for kind of a brick color, for kind of a, I was hoping it would come out kind of burgundy. And how I feel about it really depends on my mood. If I'm feeling good and I'm excited about carding, then I'm like, oh, it's really nice. It'll come out really sort of earthy, long johns, kind of like that long johns color of Brooklyn tweed shelter that I love, and I've made things out of it. And in my bad days, when it just makes me sick to even look at the color, because that's part of the pregnancy aversion is color. Can't even look at orange. Don't make me look at orange. I was like, oh, it looks so fleshy. It looks like putrefied flesh. Oh, it's so gross. But I think in person, it's really better than it looks. This weird little sausage. Yeah, so I'm carding it up into this. I'm actually pretty close to halfway through. I had carded up the first braid, when the first 4-ounce braid with as much alpaca as I could get in there turned out to be about 6 ounces, and filled a banker's box. And this is my second banker's box, which, you know, is not compressed at all, but it's probably half full. I feel like there's more than half of this left, but you know, optimism is helpful. So I feel like this second braid is going to be the hard one to get through, and that maybe if I can just power through that, then I'll really get going, and the third braid will go really quickly. This is what I'm telling myself. So I've already sampled, you know, I'm going to be making a, you know, Lord willing, I'll be making a 2-ply woolen yarn. This will be my first true woolen yarn, really. I think it's pretty close to true woolen. I know I'm using top, so that might break one of the really strict true woolen rules. But can't be perfect. So I've already got my sample, I've got my control card, I've got my plyback sample, so I'm ready to spin. I want to card this up, and I'm hoping that the spinning just goes like a breeze. You know, a worsted Aran weight 2-ply woolen spun, I'm hoping just flies. I would really like it to go quickly. So today for my demo, I wanted to show you how I've been carding this up, because it's a little different to what I've been seeing, and again, I'm not an expert. I'm a beginner. This is me sharing my learning process and not me sharing advice, and sharing what I've learned and what's worked for me. And I'll share. There's a couple of carding pages that I've really liked, and I'll try and include those in the notes as well. So without further ado, let me get going and do a few roll-outs for you. Okay, let's get moving. So these are my hand cards. Picked them up on eBay long ago, before I knew anything about anything. They are curved back hand cards, maybe not as curved as most of the curved back cards that I've seen. So I don't know. I treat them like curved backs, but they might be sort of in between. Couldn't tell you where they're from. Whoever sold them to me had Sharpie little flowers on the back, so that's cute. So here's what I've been doing to blend my the Shetland top with the alpaca roving, or the alpaca fleece. I thought rather than try and do music and subtitles, I just sort of walk you through it, because it's a talky sort of thing, and this is a little easier. So I start by loading the card, and I just sort of whip on a bunch of, ooh, yuck. Doesn't usually happen. Get a bunch of Shetland on there. You see I'm going a little higher on the card than I really should. And I'll explain my reason for that in a minute. So I get a good layer on there, and then I'm going to make I'm making an alpaca sandwich with Shetland on the outside. So I pick a few locks, very small handful, and I lay them, just lay them straight on top. It might look like I'm overloading the cards, but I'm pretty sure I am not, and you'll see why. This is still bits of straw in there a little bit. I just kind of try not to overdo it. I just put on as many locks as will fit comfortably across. Wow, big old leaf in there this time. And I put them, you know, you'll see pretty high up. I'm only leaving maybe like a centimeter at the top and not a lot of space. And that's just because these are so long. I didn't want to leave them hanging way off. I was finding that when I was doing that, they weren't blending properly. And that's why then when I then go to make a Shetland layer, I really whip it on all the way from the top, because I really want to trap the alpaca in there to be blended. And there are still, oh, okay, I thought that was a second cut. I find second cuts sometimes, I find VM sometimes, but most of it fell out in the picking process and in the sorting process. So I get a good layer on there, and you can definitely still see the tines through there. I don't know if you can tell, but there's quite a bit of tine still, so that's why I don't think I'm overloading it, is because there's plenty. So you can see I did pack this one pretty tight this time, and what I mean by whipping it on too high is that I end up with some Shetland wrapped around the top, and you really don't want to do that if you can avoid it. I felt like I had to because otherwise it just wasn't blending quite right, but if you can avoid that, don't do that. As far as the carding motion, I really fell in love with carding because of reading and watching Beth Smith and her style of carding with curved backhand cards, which is just very lightly getting the edge, turning your card perpendicular, and just pulling it off. I loved that motion because it was just so easy and smooth. That's what really made me fall in love with carding when I was messing around with it in the spring. But I found that for this project, when I was doing that, it just wasn't blending enough. The alpaca and the Shetland were not blending. There were big stripes of alpaca left in it that still looked kind of like that. So I had to kind of adjust to a more of a 45-degree angle. It's a little harder on my body, but it's not so bad. I'm not scraping. You would be able to hear it if I was scraping the tines against each other. What I'm actually doing is gripping it, lifting the fiber off the tines a little bit, and then pulling. So I work my way up, and when I've got just a little bit left, because I know this is all wrapped around here and I don't want to yank it off because that'll just make neps, when there's just this little bit left, I just lift it right off and don't pull. So that's my first pass, and you can see that after my first pass, all that stuff that was looped around the top has now become loops along the bottom. That is just ready to become neps. That is not good. So how I deal with that is on my second pass, what I do is I just sort of gently work that line of looped fiber into what I'm carding, and I'm hoping that mitigates some of the neps that could come from that. That doesn't look very nappy to me. I haven't sampled again since I started doing this way. Bad. I should really sample. But I feel like if I lose any more momentum, I'm just going to stall forever. So I have been doing a third pass. Just a real quick third pass. And then just rolling by hand. Nothing fancy. I just want to get it in some kind of a roll and off the card. I end up with quite a nice little guy. There's my roll egg. Add that to my box. I'll do another one for you. So yeah, this is when I'm hoping, some of you really experienced fiber processors out there will swoop in and say, well, you could try it this way. You could do this, you could do that. Or, oh, you're doing this wrong. And, I definitely welcome that feedback. And so please comment away. And again, I'll share the resources on the show notes so that if you really want to learn how to do this, you can get better advice than from me. But it's fun for me to share my learning process, and that's what I like to do. So thank you for putting up with my goofy situation. So just laying these on. These are a little shorter. Some of them are pretty short. This is only like 2.5 inches. But that's okay. I'm going for a more rustic kind of. Rustic just sounds like an excuse for bad yarn. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm going for something heathered, for something natural looking. And again, it's going to be, this is my first major carding project, and it's going to be my first major woolen spinning project. I do stop to pull out nups like that. I don't like that. Old fiber, man, it's a hazard of old fiber. Don't keep a stash for a long time. Now, I'm just more and more convinced that stashing is just, and I say that as someone who stashes and not in criticism of anybody, just like in criticism of, reflecting on myself and my own habits. I really think that stashing is just, it's just more materialism. It's just the spirit of the age, and it's a self-deception that we trap ourselves in. I just get so frustrated by it in myself, and I know I need to relax about it a little bit, but, this is, I'm just going to stop preaching. But that's why I have this, again, this lifting motion has been really helpful to me, to not to just grab and pull, but to grab, have the angle, lift it a little bit, and pull off. It just makes it so easy and still gives it plenty of blend. Here's that lift. So there's my line of gunk that I'm going to very gently work in here. So I know Katrina will understand if, even though she used my picture, that, if this carding project doesn't happen and I have to say no, I know she of all people will understand. You're just trying to learn self-control and trying to be reflective in my habits and in my acquisitions and stuff like that. That's what I love about this woolen spinning group, is it's just a lot of really mature adult people, mostly women so far. I haven't noticed, I don't know if I've noticed any men in the group yet, but if I've just missed it, I'm sorry, and if there's none, then I'm sure it's just a matter of time. But just really adult, caring, thoughtful people who are very respectful and not all about the advice, but about, listening and sharing, and yeah. So I'm having a good ramble. I'm enjoying it. I hope you are. So yeah, it's another roll egg. show you a few of them. Yeah, you'll see, I don't know if you can tell, but this one's a lot pinker because this is a variegated braid. Each of the Rolex just looks a little different, and the ones from the different braids are going to look different. So I'm putting each of the braids worth of Rolex into separate boxes, and then I'm going to thoughtfully mix up the Rolex from the different boxes before I start spinning. So thank you for joining me. Thank you for listening to my ramble as I carded today. That was really fun. My goal, as I've said, is to finish this carding project by December 5th. I don't know if it's going to happen, and you know, if it doesn't, it's going to be okay. Christmas is coming, Advent is coming, and I'm a priest in a small parish. It's going to be nuts, and life happens. But it's nice to have a goal, and it's nice to hold it loosely. So I think that's pretty much all I have to say today. I hope you have a really awesome conclusion to your church year. If you're a church person, our church year is coming to a close in a couple of weeks, and that you're gearing up for a really wonderful Advent and Christmas and whatever ways that you celebrate the end of the year and the darkest time of the year and our survival of it. Yeah, if you have any questions or comments or criticisms, please just say whatever. Put it in the comments on YouTube or on my blog. I'd love to hear from you, and I'd love to hear what projects you're trying to get through or stalled on or frustrated with or really enjoying. I'd really love to hear from you. So have a really